Alrighty, so today I'm coming in to film another video, okay? Today I actually had a list of things that I was going to go through and talk about, but this PS5 Pro announcement is going to move those things out of the way a little bit because I feel like I have something interesting to say about it, or at least like something to contribute to the discussion about it that's different than maybe what you might get from your typical like gaming YouTube channel. So if you are looking for that kind of information, then feel free to go and watch those videos instead. But what I hope to bring to this discussion is something a little bit more related to maybe how we ended up with the $699.99 box with no disk drive that aims to just get you to 60 FPS in fidelity mode, right? How did we reach this conclusion? And before I even start, really getting into it, I just want to say that, all shouts out and props to the guy that actually gave the presentation today, Mark Cerny, because it is, if you know anything about like the history of gaming and things like that, that guy has spent his whole career trying to do good by gamers and the developers. And, when making hardware choices, he goes out of his way to try to provide things that makes it easier for the developers to give us the experiences that we'll actually want to play. Okay. And so for an example of that is like the fact that the PS5 has the SSD technology that PCs have as well, where your SSD can speak directly to whatever's processing the information, and so therefore you remove a certain amount of like lag step that would occur in normal stuff. I'm not sure if Xbox has that now or not, but it's almost as if, while SSDs are cheap enough that it was probably going to be something that happened where we got SSDs in the PS5 in this generation of consoles, like that inclusion of the technology not only made it so that the developers could speed up load times and do all sorts of crazy stuff with that technology, but it also puts pressure on PC to enable that feature and in the games so that you can actually take advantage of it if your PC has it, but as well as for Xbox to maybe do the same thing. So I just want to get that out of the way. Like, all props to Mark Cerny. This is nothing about him. I'm sure he is going to be heavily involved in the process that I'm about to talk about, but I imagine that you have to make compromises, and somewhere along the way, I guess they decided that the demographic of gamers that would buy something like this is different than somebody like me, right? And so while I think that maybe shouldn't have been the case, so be it. I don't have access to the data that they got. Okay. So what are we going to be talking about today? So I want to try to give a little insight into what could be the process that they use to come up with some of these design decisions that ends them up in this place. And how would I know that? Okay. So I personally am a supply chain and operations management guy. I typically work in either like purchasing and sourcing with the contracting and purchasing of raw material, labor, sub-assemblies, whatever it is that we're trying to buy. In my first job, it was stuff to build distribution centers. In this job, I just work with data. But reality of the situation is I typically work in that stuff, or operational improvements, or process improvements. And in fact, I think I'm better at those two than the other, but that's just what I typically work in, okay? And so part of that is that, while I may not be a new product engineer, or I may not be in new product engineering or R&D, I have actually been a part of multiple consulting projects that had this domain as a part of it. And in fact, one of the projects that I've been on in the past dealt directly with this domain and rewriting all of the new product development processes for a large automotive manufacturer. You guys would know the name. And using the standards, the best practices that are out there to create the roadmap for what they're going to do in the future to get their certification. Okay. So with all that being said, how do we end up at the $699 box with no disk drive that aims to hit 60 FPS in fidelity mode? And so just to kind of get you guys primed for what we're talking about here. This is the PS5 Pro, okay? For $699, you get this thing with no stand to keep it upright and a controller. If you want to have a disk drive, it actually doesn't even say on this one. If you want to have a disk drive, it is sold separately. Disk drive and vertical stand is sold separately. Okay. And so what am I going to talk about that has to do with this? Well, what do these guys do? What's the process of coming up with this new product? Okay. And we can take a look at something I've got here called the Systems Engineering V model. Okay. And this here basically describes, as you can see, it goes like this. This here basically describes the process in which most good engineering companies come up with a new product. Okay. Here we have, and by the way, this is going to go under different names for different views of this, just for the sake of showing you what I've had experience with in the past. This is the automotive A-Spice version of this. And in order to get A-Spice, certification for your business, you have to prove that you do all of these things up to a certain standard. Okay. And so while you'll see what we're probably going to talk about a lot today is this requirement solicitation and system requirements analysis and system architectural design and all that, what it really is this simplicity thing right here. Okay. And so concept of operations, I'm not entirely sure what they mean by that. I personally haven't seen what that is, but maybe that's like, we have an idea of what we're kind of trying to make, right? Now, requirements and architecture, right? More specifically, requirements. More specifically, anything that anybody who is working in operations or process improvement should know, the voice of the customer. Okay, so if you guys don't know, it is like a very common thing for companies that are doing the right thing in operations to basically learn the lessons that Toyota and other companies have taught us around the voice of the customer. And who is the customer? The customer is actually every single person that has a downstream claim to whatever happens upstream, right? So my actual customer who buys the PS5 Pro is a customer. My manufacturer of the PS5 Pro is a customer. My software developers that are going to be making software for the PS5 Pro are the customer. Every single stakeholder involved is a customer. Okay? And so these things can go by different names for different people, but for the most part, this process for a lot of companies is called the stakeholder requirements analysis. Okay. It may just be requirements elicitation. What does that mean? I'm just gathering my requirements from everybody. And what is an engineering requirement? Well, this is literally, it's called a requirement because it is what is required to make the product fit all the things that will make it get bought. So sometimes in lean, we talk about critical to quality characteristics. And your requirements might be something that was influenced by a critical to quality characteristic for a certain customer. And so while I've just spoke a lot of stuff that maybe makes a lot of sense to some people, it makes very little to others. And I probably botched it along the way. There's some actual systems engineer in here like, wow, look at this supply chain guy trying to talk about engineering. But at a high level, what I've explained is correct, okay? And what does this mean for the PS5 Pro? It means that before they even get started on building anything, they come up with the desired customer experience, the desired customer, the desired, complexity of manufacturing, the desired performance and output of this thing, all based on these requirements, okay? So if they believe that the person that is going to be buying this box wanted to have a disk drive and wanted to have it cost less money and wanted, I don't know, like backwards compatibility. That was another rumor that was kind of crazy about this thing that did not come true. All that. They would have decided at the very beginning of creating this thing if that was possible and if they were going to do that. Okay. And the other part of this too is like, I'm sure somebody could be watching this and be like, yeah, but the saying, like you make a plan and, the plan dissolves at the first encounter with the enemy, right? But you have to have something in mind to know what you're going to build, okay? And so while there may be changes along this V model, while there may be something that makes it so that they make changes along the way, in general, like they figured it out already. They know what they're going to make already, okay? So what's my point in this? I'm going to try to see if I can get this to focus correctly because it just got all messed up. Okay, what's my point in this? Okay, my point is that because of that, you have to understand that if you think that it's messed up that this is coming without a disk drive, that was not a decision that was made a month ago. That was not a decision that was made after Microsoft said that they were going to release a console that had no disk drive. And now Sony's like, ooh, we're going to do that too. Even though Microsoft already got beat up for that leaked idea. What it means is that years ago, when this first started getting thought about, they intended to do this to us. Even though they saw, like the amount of support people have for physical games, the fact that the 50% of people, 75% of people download their games is a skewed statistic that has only been gotten worse since live service games that are free have become a thing. Like, even though all of this, they already know these things to be true. They already know what people want. If they actually wanted to listen to the customer, they would hear that the customer is like, hey man, I just like having the option. I like being able, it's a pretty strong value proposition that I may not ever buy a Ultra HD Blu-ray. But if I really like the new Dune movies and I want to own that, I can do that. If I really want to buy some crazy like 4K remaster of some movie that I like, I can do that and I can watch it on here. My entire library of games that I have from the PS4 generation, before digital was even that popular, like, boom, I want to have the ability to play those games. All the games, if I currently own a disc model PS5 for that reason, before it was modular, right? I have already bought all my disc-based PS5 games. So anyway, you guys get where I'm going with this. But they made that decision to not care about that customer at the very beginning. Okay? And so what is my point in saying all that? And I'm actually going to kind of wrap it up here a little bit because I don't think I have too much to add. But the idea is that, guys, that if you think that they are trying to build a future where the consumer has no inherent value and they can make you buy stuff a million times over and they can take away your digital license to stuff whenever they want, and games like games that have cars or music in it or anything that has a license will be ripped away from you the second that license expires. If you do not like that future, know that they came up with the plan to do that years ago. They decided to do that to you years ago, not when Concord failed, not when like they realized they could kind of do this to us and slowly phase out the disc. They came up with that idea a long time ago. And to be honest, it shows that they're using this process and that they do kind of care about us, because Mark Cerny said himself, we looked at the data and we saw that 3/4 of players are choosing to do the performance mode instead of the fidelity mode. Why is that? It's, everybody in the games industry says it like they're so confused why everybody likes that more. Dude, the most popular games out right now are competitive multiplayer games. The second most popular type of game coming out right now is action RPGs. God of War or Elden Ring likes. You know what I mean? So let's look at it. God of War itself, God of War Ragnarok, freaking Horizon could be called that, freaking Black Myth Wukong, Elden Ring itself, Dark, Souls likes in general are all some form of action RPG. Those two types of games are not the type of game where you want to play at a cinematic frame rate. Like, even in the best action RPGs, at some point, there's a level of special effects where 30 FPS just doesn't cut it, okay? Because even though 30 FPS is supposed to be, basically like a movie, because movies are in 24 FPS, but the second I start blowing stuff up, the second I start using multiple of Kratos' weapons and using, the triangle mode and all that, like, the game is not going to be able to keep up. I'm not picking on God of War. I actually think God of War has some of the best performance out of any of the games I played on the PS5. And the performance mode, I'm pretty sure if I had a 120 FPS TV, I have heard that it can actually get up in there. So, I'm not picking on them, but I'm just saying that these games, and then the competitive games, the esports games, the live service games, those games are all about performance, because if I am running at 30 frames per second and some guy on PC is running Call of Duty at 144, he's going to literally have like more frames to look at. Like, I know the human eye is only perceptible of so many things, but he will literally be able to dunk on me just because his stuff is smoother, right? So, these are the most popular games, and that's how people are playing. And so, they want to try to, I don't think they know they're catering to that. Maybe, I'm sure they do actually. But, I think Spawnwave had a good point today where he was saying that it seems like developers are making games the other way around, where the performance mode is sort of an after effect. And I think that's maybe due to the simplicity of being able just to scale back the graphics after you've already made the fidelity mode. And that's why some of these performance modes come out kind of But the reason why we want to play these games at 60 FPS is because the games that are popular to play right now are just better that way. And we don't, something like, I think it was like Hellblade or Senua's Saga or whatever, like this sort of a thing is going to be better at 30 FPS almost with the high fidelity, because it is a game, like a more sneaky game where there's not a lot of quick action, not a lot of special effects happening at one time. And so the cinematic aspect of it makes a lot more sense. Okay. But what's my point in going in on this ramble? It seems like they care at least a little bit of trying to look at the data of what the players are doing and trying to match that. And so to some extent, we should throw them a bone, because they are looking. They said 35% of people, or sorry, 3/4 of the people, 75% of people play in performance mode. So we're going to find a way to give you a product that allows you to get performance mode frame rate at fidelity mode quality. So both the developer customer and the consumer customer are happy. But then somewhere along the way, they're like, the developer, we care a lot about them because they make the thing. If we don't get the Black Wukong exclusivity over Xbox, then like we're screwed. You know what I mean? Like, part of that is when you cater to the developer, you get the best stuff. That's what happened with the PlayStation 1 and Final Fantasy 7, right? So it's just like, we have to be realistic about that. But at the same time, why are we leaving the consumer behind? Why are we then, when we need to make choices about the way we move our business model, we err on like screwing over the consumer? Because here's the thing. I'm not even mad that they have a discless version of this thing. I'm just mad that there isn't a standard version of it that comes with the disc, that comes at a discount over the $80 you would pay to get the modular option today. Because it assumes that everybody wants to start off without the disc drive, and then every single one of these pieces, these consoles in the wild will exist without a disk drive to start, right? And what's the problem with that? The problem with that is that if you are a game collector, if you worked at a secondhand game store at all, like I have for a little bit, and if you've ever like literally been a part of this whole physical media stuff at all, you start to realize that if you wanted to play any games from the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, or PlayStation 3 era right now, without, minus a small select few games that are available via backwards compatibility, you are stuck to buying that console, buying the disc of that game, and putting it in your machine and playing it like that, because the stores are about to shut down. The Xbox 360 store just shut down. When those are gone, there's no digital way to get this stuff. And for the older consoles, there's never really been a digital way to get this stuff completely. If you don't live in an internet area without disc-based games, you simply cannot play. In the past, we used to get... so let me just stop right there at that point. So it's like, this thing will literally... This PS5 Pro will literally become a paperweight the day that this store fails. Now, you and I both know that's not exactly true, because people will find a way to jailbreak this thing and open up pirated repos to it so that you could just download whatever it is you want from pirating sites on the internet and all that, because that already exists for all the examples of the store shutting down today that we know of. Okay? But the reality behind this is that taking away the disk drive, having this insane price, is okay to me. Taking away the disk drive is messed up. Having this insane price is okay. But having this insane price without the disk drive, with basically making this into a brick by default for the people that buy this, means that years from now, when people are trying to play PS5 and PS4 on a PS5 Pro, you're going to have to not only buy a PS5 Pro, but find somebody that has a working secondhand modular disk drive that did not get absolutely torched by being some extra add-on accessory. Or B, you basically have to buy a whole nother PS5 to scalp one from it and then put that one up for sale or whatever. It just creates something where it's like, I'm not getting the value proposition in what you're giving me is no longer that high. Okay. Not to mention that, what if, like I said before, what if you want to watch a movie on this thing? Oh, you can only stream it. Or if you have some app on this thing where you've already bought it, you can buy it from there. But we already know, literally Sony themselves have tried to take people's digital purchases away this year. So, Amazon does it all the time. One of my family members had an issue where somebody fraudulently signed into their account. Not really, it was their parents. But because of that, they locked down their own account. And when their account was locked down, Amazon literally just locked them out of everything they owned. Everything they bought digitally they were no longer able to use until they got their account back. And it wasn't even they couldn't log into their account. It's because suspicious activity was going on, nobody could touch anything that had been purchased, right? So this whole model, this whole digital model, we already know screws us over. Okay, let's talk. I have a backwards, not to brag, but I have a backwards compatible PS3 right there. That thing plays CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, super audio CDs, actually, which is pretty crazy, even though nobody even uses that format. And, it even allowed you, I don't know if you guys know this, but it even allowed you to stick in a CD and rip all the files of the CD to your PS3. So then you could go back without the CD and listen to this stuff on your own time, as long as you had the storage space. Imagine, I know they'll never be able to do that with movies without some sort of make MKV situation because of how bad that industry is locked down. But it's just can you realize the amount of value that could be provided via software? They could enable the ability for us to use these UHD drives to play CDs at very high quality. at like very, very high quality. And they can enable these drives to allow us to do, basically anything we want, like take the CD files off there or whatever. But the reality is they're not going to do that because the businesses that they work with are upset when that type of stuff exists. Okay. Everybody wants a digital future. Nobody wants you to be able to have this stuff physical because then you actually own it. You can share it with people. You can do things with it. And until the way that you currently consume it now becomes broken and unusable, you will never have to buy it again. They hate that. They don't like that. That's like literally the thing that they hate the most. Like if you want to know why GameStop has just gone down the crapper and why all these secondhand places have too, it's like, well, how come my local game store can't ever get new copies of games? Because they don't want you to shop there. Because when you buy a used game, they get no money, even if it's the best deal for the consumer. So how do I remove the ability for you to get used games at all? I create an environment where you can only buy digital. I know you guys are already on this. I'm now 25 minutes into this rant. But I just wanted to, I guess, give you guys a little bit of context with like, if you're wondering how these engineering decisions get made, these requirements, the requirement solicitation, they consider everybody's hat in the ring. And in this scenario, they chose the business units and possibly the developers over you and I. So, I don't know, man. At this point, there's literally not a gaming console company that has not screwed us over. There's nobody. Like, Nintendo hates you big time, but at least they're so archaic that they're not trying to force the digital future. And they've already moved over to SD cards, so they're like, I don't have to worry about optical media. It's great. And I actually don't have it up here, but there's ways to get those games on your computer as well. And that kind of makes them low-key good, even though they hate it. Okay? The other thing is, Microsoft made it in their leak of all their stuff that went on with the ABK case, we realized they're pretty transparently against disc games. And we know that their core competency is going to be this cloud stuff. They really think this cloud stuff is going to win in the end. And when you have Azure, I mean, maybe that's how you think. You know what I mean? The other piece of this is now Sony, the last company where we're like, honestly, you're kind of screwing with us too, but at least you don't mess with the fundamentals. At least you still got disk-based games. At least you're going to still give us a disk drive. Now we know that's not the case. Okay? So we need somebody else. If somebody else, by the way capitalism works is like we all hate these products right now to some degree. That means that if we stop buying them, the market for these products still exists. But the consumers buying them will not be buying the products that exist. So, a new product has an entry point to disrupt the market. And what does this new product have to do? Simply function in a way where it won't brick 5 years from now. If you think that you can meet that barrier and you would like some free supply chain consulting to get your console business off the ground, I'd be more than happy to help you out with that. But we need somebody else, guys. We just need somebody else. We need somebody else. And furthermore, if they imagine who's the consumer for this? Is the consumer for this like the guy? Are the pay pigs like really into the digital future? Are the pay pigs really into the convenience that much? Like that to me sounds like some like Tesla buyer mother effer, but it's just like, okay, this is our current situation. And personally, I'm not buying one. I know nobody cares that I'm not buying one, but it's frustrating that we're stuck here because I am the type of person that would spend dumb money on whatever it is they come out with. And I see this and I'm just like, they really just hate me. Like they hate us. dude. So anyway, somebody else make a new console. Somebody else be smart enough to make the machine that allows you to dump all your PS1, PS2, PS3, Xbox 360, and so on and so forth games into a disk drive that has the firmware to make you be able to do so, and then have a front end like RetroArch and allow you to play all these things and make money on a device that these companies simply apparently cannot figure out how to do. But I'm just saying, I'm at this point, I'm just saying like random stuff. But it's just like, just to wrap this up, they made this decision a long time ago, and we have been chosen to be the people that they decided to make cuts for. If you don't like that, you don't have to give them your money, and they're already going to start releasing all this stuff on PC anyway. And the PC companies aren't that much better. Look at Intel and their inability to make their stuff more efficient to the point where now they're basically just dying on the vine. Look at NVIDIA. Now they're so engrossed by AI that they probably don't care about graphics cards anymore. But the reality is we have to figure out where to put our dollars. And the current situation is very hostile to all of us. So let's figure that out, and let's be a little bit smarter with what we spend our money on. Okay? So that's my message. The PS5 Pro announcement has given me 30 minutes of rant. If you stayed to the end of this video, I appreciate it. Please comment down below. I will catch you guys on the next one.